Stop chasing success. Start becoming magnetic to it. We chase goals, we chase money, we chase titles, and yet we're stuck, tired, unfulfilled. Why? Because success isn't something you hunt. It's not a prize at the end of effort. It's a mirror, a reflection of who you are when no one's watching. If you're not becoming the man who naturally attracts opportunity, results will keep slipping through your fingers. Here's the truth. The man who wins isn't the loudest, the smartest, or even the most talented. He's the most aligned. His identity, his discipline, his beliefs, all in sync. He doesn't chase success. He becomes someone success follows. That's where Stoic philosophy comes in. Not as a theory, but as a tool to forge character, to sharpen purpose, to build daily discipline. In this video, you'll learn how to build a Stoic success mindset, install habits that last, and develop mental toughness that can't be shaken. This is more than motivation, it's a blueprint. So if you're ready to become the kind of man success respects, like this video, subscribe to Stoic Narratives and share this with one brother who's ready to rise. Let's begin. 1. Think like the person you want to become. What if the greatest barrier between you and extraordinary success wasn't your skills, your education, or your network, but the man you currently believe you are? What if your entire future, your income, your legacy, your peace of mind was being held hostage by your own outdated self-image? That quiet voice in your head that says, "I'm not ready," or "that kind of life isn't for someone like me." You don't need more motivation. You don't need another tactic. You need to change the identity you wake up with every morning. Because success doesn't come to those who try harder. It comes to those who become different. Not better at chasing, but better at being. Years ago, a man named Edwin C. Barnes made a decision that would rewrite the course of his life. He didn't have connections, he didn't have money, but he had a vision. Not of the world, but of himself. He decided, without permission or guarantee, that he would be Thomas Edison's business partner. Not his assistant, not his admirer, his partner. He visualized it so clearly and believed it so fully that he jumped on a freight train to New Jersey with nothing but conviction in his bag. When he finally met Edison, he didn't beg for a job, he declared his intention. And though he wasn't handed the title immediately, he acted each day like he already owned it. In time, when the opportunity came, Barnes wasn't chosen because he was lucky. He was chosen because he had already become the kind of man that success could not ignore. That's the truth most people avoid. They think if they just do more, work harder, and wait longer, success will eventually knock. But success doesn't knock. It doesn't beg. It follows identity. The man who walks with certainty, who moves with intention, who aligns his thoughts, actions, and beliefs, he doesn't chase success. He becomes magnetic to it. This is where the Stoic lens slices through modern confusion. The Stoics didn't obsess over goals, they obsessed over character. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth, not because he desired greatness, but because he governed himself. He wrote to his own soul daily, shaping it like a blacksmith shaping iron, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. Because he understood a hard truth. You are not the result of what you want. You are the result of what you tolerate in yourself. So ask yourself, what identity are you carrying that no longer fits the life you say you want? Do you wake up and think like a man who builds wealth? Or do you still carry the thought patterns of scarcity? Do you act like a man who commands respect, or are your habits dragging you into invisibility? Your outer world is a direct extension of your inner architecture. And right now, if success isn't sticking to you, it's because the version of you in the mirror isn't designed to hold it. Changing your identity doesn't mean pretending. It means upgrading, refining, replacing self-pity with self-accountability, replacing hesitation with intention, replacing comfort with the cold edge of discipline. And that begins not with affirmations or vision boards, but with action. Small daily action that rewrites the story you tell yourself about who you are. Want to become the man success follows? Then think like him now. Don't wait for the results to believe. That's weakness disguised as logic. You move first. You act like a man with clarity, strength, and self-command. You choose silence over validation. You show up when no one claps. You keep promises no one sees. Because that's how men rise. That's how you earn gravity in a world full of noise. You don't become that man by accident, you forge him. So here's the shift. Stop identifying with who you were. That version may have served you once, but he can't take you where you're going. The man who gets there isn't waiting for permission. He's not waiting to feel ready. He's not asking for validation. He's building brick by brick, habit by habit, thought by thought. The kind of presence success cannot resist. And when your thoughts match your mission, when your habits reflect your hunger, when your identity becomes too powerful to ignore, opportunities stop passing you by. They find you because they recognize their match. And in that moment, you'll realize you never needed to chase anything. You just needed to become. So what now? Wake up and think like the man you claim you want to be. Then act accordingly. Again and again, until your life adjusts to match it. Because it will. It always does. 2. Define clear, actionable goals. Seneca once wrote, "If a man does not know to which port he is sailing, no wind is favorable." So let me ask you, right now, is the ship of your ambition simply drifting, or have you charted a course toward a clearly defined destination? Because drifting feels like progress. The waves are moving, the days are passing, but without direction, motion is meaningless. It's not lack of potential that destroys most men. It's the absence of clarity. They confuse busyness with purpose, and years slip away. The world tells you to chase success, but the Stoic asks you, what does success actually look like for you? You say you want to be wealthy, but how much? By when? You say you want to be powerful, but in what way? Through what kind of work? What kind of discipline? You say you want freedom, but what would you do with it? Without answers, these become hollow phrases, empty affirmations that echo louder in your head the longer they go undefined. A man without goals is a warrior without a target. He swings hard, he sweats, he shouts, but every strike lands nowhere. And worse, every day without direction erodes your inner strength. Because men are not built to wander, they are built to build, and what you build must begin with vision. Specific, measurable, time-bound, anchored to your identity, not your fantasies. A young man I met years ago worked the night shift in a warehouse. Every evening, he moved boxes, cleaned pallets, and clocked hours in silence. Not for a paycheck, but for a purpose. He was saving, day by day, to launch his own woodworking shop. He had a clear goal, to open within 18 months, to serve 10 clients in his first quarter, and to build custom furniture that outlived trends. And while other workers complained, drifted, or wasted time scrolling on their phones, he kept stacking, sweating, saving. When the shop opened on the exact week he had planned, it wasn't luck. It was clarity turned into a ritual. This is what most men lack. Not talent, not energy, but a blueprint. They live reactively, waking up and checking their phones before checking their purpose. They want the freedom of success, but haven't broken it down into the daily commitments it demands. And so they feel lost, not because they're weak, but because their internal compass is rusted from disuse. Stoic philosophy offers no tolerance for drifting. It demands you to name your aim. If you want to build wealth, define what wealth looks like. Break it into exact numbers, tracked weekly. If your aim is to strengthen your mind, set the number of books you'll read, the pages you'll write, the minutes you'll train in silence. If your goal is to build influence, choose how often you'll speak, lead, and create. Vague desires invite vague action. But defined goals sharpen your will like steel against stone. And this isn't about pressure. It's about power. Clarity doesn't restrict you, it frees you. It gives every hour meaning. It gives every sacrifice direction. It gives your identity a home to live in. You stop being a wanderer and become a builder. You no longer just show up. You shape every day like a sculptor shapes stone. Focused, deliberate, precise. So take stock, right now. Ask yourself not just what you want, but what it looks like, in full detail. Where are you by the end of this year? In 6 months? In 30 days? Then ask, what habits must be installed to meet that? What must be eliminated? What must be tracked? Because success doesn't come to men who wish. It comes to men who prepare the ground. Define your goals as if your life depends on it, because it does. The future version of you, the one with clarity, strength, and results, will not be surprised by success. He will simply arrive there, not because the wind was favorable, but because he steered the ship with his own hands. 3. Resilience turns setbacks into comebacks. Sooner or later, you will fall. You will miss the mark, fail the plan, and break the promise. No man walks the road to greatness without meeting the ground. But the Stoics understood a truth that most ignore. It's not the fall that defines you. It's how quickly, how wisely, and how relentlessly you rise. Resilience isn't a trait. It's a choice you make in the darkest moment. Marcus Aurelius gave us one of the most powerful reframings in the history of philosophy when he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He wasn't offering comfort, he was offering a command. He was telling us that what looks like resistance is actually the path forward, if you choose to meet it like a man. So what if the very thing that feels like it's holding you back is actually what's meant to reshape you? That challenge, that failure, that punch to the gut, it's not here to break you. It's here to reveal you. Because who you are when life is easy doesn't matter. Who you are when everything falls apart, that's your identity in the raw. And if you've built your mind on Stoic principles, you won't crumble. You'll recalibrate, you'll adapt, you'll keep moving. The modern man who is mentally tough doesn't run from difficulty. He looks it in the eye and says, "You're late. I've been training for this." But most men don't. They stall, they spiral, they mistake setbacks for sentences. They confuse a hard moment with a hard life. The job loss becomes a story of failure. The breakup becomes an identity crisis. The mistake becomes proof they're not worthy. And slowly they build a cage around themselves, made not of steel, but of excuses. Resilience is what breaks that cage. Resilience doesn't mean pretending it's easy. It means choosing not to let pain turn into paralysis. It means standing up every time with more clarity than you had before. I once spoke with a man who lost everything in 6 months. Job, marriage, savings. He said the mornings felt like war. Getting out of bed was a battle against shame. But something shifted the day he stopped asking why me and started asking what now. He began waking up at 5 a.m. He ran, not to escape, but to endure. He wrote 3 goals every morning and crossed them out by night. He didn't feel strong. He acted strong, day after day, until one morning he woke up and realized he hadn't just recovered, he had rebuilt. That's what resilience looks like. Not dramatic, not loud, just quiet strength is repeated daily. And Stoicism gives you the blueprint. When life hits, you don't react, you respond. You control what you can endure, what you must, and never let a single event write your story. You train your mind to see setbacks not as curses, but as correction. Each failure is data. Each obstacle is a gym for the soul. And every time you move through pain with discipline, you harden into a man who cannot be broken. But this only happens if you stop expecting ease, if you stop searching for a life without friction. Growth doesn't live in comfort. It lives in resistance. It lives in the cold mornings you get up anyway, in the rejections you face without flinching, in the silence you embrace while building in the shadows. This is the identity that attracts real success, one built through fire, not fantasy. So next time you fall, don't waste time feeling bad. Get up, breathe, reset. Ask, what is this teaching me about who I am and who I need to become? Then move forward, calm, focused, unshaken. That's what makes you unstoppable. Not because you never lose, but because no loss ever has the power to stop you. 4. Build unshakable self-belief. That voice in your head that whispers, "You're not ready, you'll fail, you're not enough." It often sounds so reasonable, doesn't it? Like a voice of caution, like logic trying to protect you. But what if that voice isn't logical at all? What if it's just fear of wearing a clever disguise, dressed in words that sound smart but keep you small? Every man has heard it. Some listen, some fight back. The difference defines everything. You don't attract success by begging for it. You attract it by broadcasting conviction. Not arrogance, not fake confidence, but the quiet certainty that says, "I belong here, I've done the work, I'm ready." Your internal state leaks. Whether you mean it to or not, it speaks to the world. It either says, "I'm building something real," or "I'm still waiting to believe in myself," and the world responds accordingly. Success doesn't knock on the door of the man who's unsure of his worth. It walks straight into the room of the one who's already claimed it in silence. Self-belief is not a feeling you wait for. It's a habit you train. David Goggins wasn't born believing in himself. He was broken, overweight, abused, and afraid. But he made a choice to stop letting his past write his future. He didn't feel strong, so he started doing what strong men do. Every morning before the sun rose, he ran. He studied, he pushed. And with each small act of defiance against the story in his head, he rewrote the script. Not in theory, in blood, sweat, and repetition. Eventually, the world stopped seeing a broken man. It started seeing the most disciplined, unstoppable man alive. But that shift didn't come from the world. It came from inside him first. That's the truth most won't tell you. Belief doesn't come from compliments. It comes from evidence. You build it the same way you build muscle. With effort, discomfort, and brutal consistency. Every time you say I will and follow through, you lay a brick. Every time you keep your word in private, you lay a brick. Every time you stand up when it would be easier to sit down, another brick. That's how self-belief is built. Not by hoping, but by proving. And the Stoics understood this long before it became trending advice. Epictetus was born a slave. He had nothing. No status, no control over his environment. But he realized something powerful. No one could touch his mind. No one could control how he chose to see himself. He didn't define his worth by external labels. He anchored it to internal standards. And that's what made him unshakable. He didn't beg for validation. He lived by principle. And that, more than anything, is what drew others to him. So ask yourself, are you radiating belief or insecurity? Are you standing tall when no one is looking? Are your habits reflecting the man you say you want to become, or the man you're afraid you'll always be? Because that's the difference between men who rise and men who remain. One trains certainty, the other rehearse excuses. If you want to build belief, stop chasing motivation. Chase consistency. Create small, undeniable wins. Wake up early, do the hard thing first. Set targets and crush them, even when they seem minor. Especially then. Confidence doesn't come from what you tell yourself in the mirror. It comes from what you can't unsee in your track record. And when you've built enough proof, something shifts. You walk differently, you speak differently. You don't need to convince anyone, you've already convinced yourself. And when that happens, when your presence says, I'm ready before your mouth opens, success notices. People notice. Opportunities start showing up, not because you've changed the world, but because you've changed how you stand in it. The battlefield doesn't get easier. But now, you don't flinch. You don't ask for permission. You just move. That's the power of unshakable self-belief. So don't wait for the voice in your head to disappear. It won't. Just stop negotiating with it. Drown it out with action, with evidence, with relentless follow-through. And one day, it'll stop whispering you can't, because it'll realize you already did. 5. Discipline over motivation. It sounds like a paradox, but real freedom isn't doing what you feel like. Real freedom is having the discipline to do what matters, especially when you don't feel like it. That's why the best athletes train on the days they're tired. That's why the greatest writers show up even when inspiration dies. They don't rely on moods. They don't wait for motivation to strike. They move on to something stronger, something rare, something forged. Discipline. The amateur waits to feel ready. The professional moves anyway. That's the difference between a man who wants to succeed and a man who is becoming successful. One is ruled by emotion, the other is governed by principle. And principle is not about feeling good, it's about becoming unshakable. The Stoics would call it alignment, a state where your actions are no longer hijacked by what's easy, but guided by what's essential. There's a man I once met, a former track athlete, Olympic-level talent, but a devastating knee injury ended his competitive career just before it peaked. For years, he struggled with identity loss. He could have quit training, he could have walked away from the grind, but he didn't. He woke up at 5 a.m., ran slow laps, trained kids in his neighborhood, and kept journaling his routines. Not for the Olympics, but for himself. Discipline had already become who he was. That identity didn't need a finish line to survive. Years later, that same rhythm, that same early morning mindset became the foundation for a thriving coaching business. Today, he's more respected off the track than he ever was on it. Not because he won medals, but because he never stopped showing up. That's what discipline does. It outlives moments. It builds a man into something success can trust. And that's where most men fail. Not because they're lazy, but because they expect to feel ready. They wait for motivation as if it were loyalty. But motivation is a traitor. It abandons you in the cold. It forgets its promises when things get hard. But discipline? Discipline sharpens in the dark. It shows up without applause. It moves in silence. That's why the Stoics called discipline the root of virtue, because without it, nothing else holds. You say you want to grow, to build wealth, to lead, to attract success. But are your actions consistent or conditional? Do you train when no one's watching? Do you do the work when it's boring, when it's slow, when it hurts? Or do you retreat the moment motivation fades? Because that's when the real shaping begins. Not when it's easy, but when everything in you wants to stop. Discipline is the fuel of mental toughness, and you don't inherit it. You build it. Not through grand gestures, but through small victories done daily. Wake up when you say you will. Finish what you start. Keep promises, even when no one will know you broke them. This is how identity changes. This is how men become dangerous to their excuses. It's not about pushing harder, it's about never negotiating with your lower self. The Stoic doesn't ask, do I feel like doing this today? He asks, is this aligned with the man I'm becoming? That's the standard. That's the fuel. And when you operate like that, something strange happens. You no longer need to feel inspired. You become inspiring. To others, but more importantly, to yourself. So the next time your mind whispers, not today, stand up. Go anyway. Train anyway. Build anyway. Because every rep done without motivation is one more strike on the forge of your character. And if you hit the steel long enough, with enough focus and enough consistency, the shape will change. The man will change. Not into someone who waits for success, but into someone who draws it in with the quiet force of discipline. If you've made it this far, it means you're not just curious, you're committed. That's rare. Stay with me, because this path isn't just about motivation, it's about mastering the wisdom to become the man success follows. Let's keep going. 6. Apply what you learn. How many great ideas have you absorbed that never touched your real life? You've read the books, listened to the podcasts, watched the speeches. You know what mental toughness means. You understand the power of morning habits. You've heard that discipline beats motivation. But here's the brutal truth. Knowledge doesn't change you. Execution does. Information is cheap. Application is priceless. Reading about swimming won't keep you afloat. You need to get wet. You need to feel the cold shock of the water. You need to flail, sink, kick, breathe, try again. That's how mastery happens, not by memorizing theory, but by living the work. And yet so many men treat self-development like entertainment. They collect quotes, save reels, nod in agreement, but their life stays the same, because they never step into the arena. They never make it real. A man who wins doesn't just know, he applies. He installs what he learns into his calendar, into his behavior, into his identity. He reads something powerful in the morning, and you see it in his decisions by the afternoon. He doesn't just highlight the page, he becomes the kind of man that sentence was written for. Every insight is translated into action. Every principle becomes a habit. Every habit becomes a weapon. That's the difference between the man who talks about success and the man who becomes it. The first man quotes philosophy. The second man embodies it. One says, I'm learning about focus. The other builds a daily system that eliminates distraction. One says, I'm working on mental resilience. The other starts training cold showers, hard conversations, and delayed gratification. Because he knows that action, not theory, forges change. Stoicism was never about sounding wise. It was about living well. And that kind of man, the one who lives what he learns, becomes unstoppable. Not because life gets easier, but because he gets clearer. His mind sharpens because he tests it against resistance. His habits harden because they're reinforced through repetition, not reflection alone. His presence speaks louder than his words. You don't need him to say what he believes. You feel it when he walks in the room. Every time you take what you've read, what you've heard, what you've written down, and act on it immediately, you're sending a signal to yourself, a signal that says, I'm not just here to know, I'm here to become. And the more often you do this, the more your brain rewires itself to trust your word. Your inner voice gets stronger. The gap between thought and execution closes. The excuses start to die. This is the core of all lasting success. Not raw intellect, not a fancy strategy, but practical application is repeated until it becomes identity. If you want a sharper mind, apply what you read. If you want stronger discipline, act on your commitments. If you want to attract greatness, move like a man who's already earned it, not with arrogance, but with consistency. So from this moment forward, stop treating insight like a souvenir. Treat it like an order. Every time you learn something worth remembering, tie it to a behavior. Anchor it to the real world. Write it down, assign a time, and build a ritual. Your brain is a blade, but if you don't apply friction, it goes dull. And dull men don't win battles. From this point on, be the kind of man who acts faster than he overthinks, who applies more than he collects, who does more than he plans. Because the world doesn't need more people who know what to do. It needs more men who do it, daily, without noise, without applause. That's who you're becoming. Keep forging. 7. Your circle shapes your future. Take a moment and think. Really think about the 5 people you spend the most time with. Do they sharpen your thinking, challenge your discipline, and celebrate your growth? Or do they drain your focus, excuse your stagnation, and normalize mediocrity? Whether you like it or not, your circle is shaping your fate. Not just in theory, in habits, in identity, in the direction your life is silently taking. Seneca didn't say, be nice to everyone. He said, associate with people who will make you better. That's not soft advice. That's a strategic order for the man who intends to rise. No matter how strong your vision is, if you're surrounded by people who don't believe in momentum, don't value discipline, and don't demand more from themselves, you will eventually soften. Steel does not stay sharp when it's left in the mud. Look around. Are you the most driven person in the room? Are you constantly explaining your goals to people who don't get it? Are you hiding parts of your ambition to stay relatable? That's not humility. That's self-sabotage. Because comfort in weak environments creates weakness in strong moments. And the man who chooses comfort in conversation will eventually lose clarity in execution. Let's make it more real. There's a man watching this now who has 3 kinds of people in his circle. The first tells him he's working too hard and should relax more. The second listens to his dreams but never takes action on their own. The third quietly resents his growth, throwing in subtle jokes to keep him small. None of them push him forward, but he keeps them around, out of habit, out of guilt, out of fear that if he let them go, he'd be alone. But solitude is not the enemy. Stagnation is. You weren't born to be understood by everyone. You were born to grow. And sometimes, growth demands separation. That doesn't mean arrogance. That means choosing alignment over nostalgia. That means surrounding yourself with men who hold themselves to higher standards, so you're constantly forced to level up or fall behind. The Stoics would say that your environment must serve your virtue. Your tribe must reflect your principles, and if it doesn't, you must act. Not with hatred, but with intention. Protect your energy like a fortress. Give your time like currency, because those who influence your mind influence your future. So now the question becomes, are you strategizing your circle like a man building a legacy? Or are you just hoping it works out on its own? If the men around you aren't challenging your laziness, calling out your excuses and pulling you into discipline, then they're pulling you away from it, even if they don't mean to. Influence isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet indifference, a lack of urgency, a tolerance for mediocrity disguised as being chill. And over time, that soft influence hardens your identity. Do you want to be the kind of man success follows? Then build a tribe that forces you to think clearer, work harder, and act sharper. Find men who outpace you, who wake up earlier, who expect more from themselves, not because they're better, but because they've chosen better standards. Let their fire light yours. And if you can't find them nearby, seek them in books, in mentors, in minds greater than your own. Proximity is power, even digital proximity. So here's your next move. Audit your circle. Not with emotion, with strategy. Who pulls you forward? Who holds you back? Who drains your time? Who fuels your potential? Then take action. You don't need to burn bridges. Just stop building on ones that lead nowhere. Create space for the kind of men your future demands. Because the life you want is being built, silently, by the voices you hear every day. Choose wisely, walk intentionally, and remember, who surrounds you is not a reflection of your past. It's a prediction of your future. Forge your circle like you'd forge a blade, with fire, precision, and no tolerance for dullness. 8. Shift from scarcity to abundance. There are two ways to view the world. One man looks through a cracked lens, seeing only lack, problems, and closed doors. The other polishes his vision until he finds opportunity in the same places the first man sees dead ends. One lens fuels hesitation, fear, and comparison. The other breathes confidence, creativity, and movement. Same world, same conditions, different man. So the question is, which lens are you looking through? The man trapped in scarcity sees someone else succeed and quietly resents it. He assumes every win around him takes something away from him. He believes life is zero-sum, and his mind is a courtroom, always judging, always defending. He hoards energy, hoards praise, hoards belief, because deep down he's afraid there's not enough to go around. But the man trained in abundance plays a different game. He sees someone else win and smiles. Why? Because to him, that's evidence that it's possible. That success is not limited, it's just under-leveraged. His brain isn't wired to compare, it's trained to create. And that wiring doesn't come from books or quotes, it comes from practice. From choosing every single day to believe in more rather than less. This isn't about naive optimism. This is about psychological dominance. Scarcity shrinks your field of vision. Abundance sharpens your perception. One man walks into a room and scans for what could go wrong. Another walks in and scans for how he can add value. One pulls back, the other steps forward. That tiny difference becomes massive over time. And Stoicism gives you the tool to shift. Because the Stoics didn't live easy lives. They lived in chaos, war, exile, loss. But they mastered one thing most men today never even question: interpretation. The world doesn't define your reality, your perception does. And if your perception is chained to scarcity, you'll never move with power. But if your perception is trained toward abundance, you start making different moves. Bolder, clearer, freer. Think about this. You walk into a business meeting where your idea is one of 5 being pitched. Scarcity says there's only one winner. I have to fight for attention. If they get chosen, I lose. So you shrink, you sell from fear, you overtalk, you miss. But abundance says there's always more room for impact. I don't need to dominate, I need to serve clearly. So you speak with calm clarity, you listen sharply, you offer your solution, then step back. That posture, that shift, doesn't just affect how others respond, it rewires how you see yourself. And the room feels it. Now stretch that to every area of life. In relationships, do you see love as something to clutch or something to grow? In finances, do you hold your money with fear or invest it with conviction? In your career, do you assume doors are closed or look for new walls to break? You become the man your mindset prepares you to be. And abundance is preparation. It trains your nervous system to handle bigger rooms, bigger risks, and bigger decisions. But you don't install it overnight. You build it like a Stoic builds virtue, slowly, through repetition, especially when it's hard. Here's how you begin. First, practice gratitude with precision. Not just for big wins, for the smallest things: clean water, working lungs, clear mind. Write them, say them. Anchor your awareness, because a grateful brain is an abundant brain. Next, challenge your mental filters. Every time you hear that whisper, "I don't have enough time, I'm not ready, that opportunity's taken," pause, replace it, speak the opposite. Not as fantasy, but as reprogramming. Last, surround yourself with builders, not blamers. With creators, not complainers. Because mindset is contagious, and abundance grows fastest in the right soil. This is not spiritual fluff, this is warrior-grade mental reconditioning. When you shift to abundance, your posture changes. You stop chasing, you start attracting. You stop competing from insecurity, you start creating from identity. The battlefield doesn't change, but your stance does. And that's what makes you dangerous. So next time life tests you, stop looking at what's missing. Start looking at what's possible, not to feel better, but to move better. Because the man who walks in abundance never begs for opportunity. He becomes it. 9. Align passion with purpose and move relentlessly. You can build the life everyone admires and still feel hollow inside. Why? Because achievement without alignment is emptiness dressed in gold. You can win awards, collect checks, gain followers, yet lie awake at night wondering, why does none of this feel like enough? What's missing isn't more money, more attention, more speed. It's clarity, a straight line connecting what you love, why it matters, and how you do it every single day. Passion alone burns fast, purpose alone can grow cold. But together, fueled by disciplined action, they become unstoppable. When you align them, you stop chasing approval. You start living with power, not loud power. Quiet, focused, relentless power. The kind that makes you magnetic, even in silence. You've seen this before. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson didn't become a global force just by lifting weights or cracking jokes. He started with passion, wrestling, storytelling, drive. But he matched it with purpose. To inspire, to break generational ceilings, to redefine what a man can be in the modern world. And he backed it with ruthless discipline. 4 a.m. workouts, strategic branding, years of unglamorous grind behind the scenes. He didn't wait for passion to fuel him. He built his world around it, aimed it like a weapon, and pushed it through purpose into action. That's why he didn't just succeed. He became a symbol. This is what most men miss. They either drown in scattered passion or grind away at goals that aren't even theirs. You say you love creating, but you haven't attached it to a mission. You say you want to lead, but you haven't connected it to something bigger than yourself. And so you drift, you burn out, you climb a ladder, only to realize it's leaned against the wrong wall. Stoicism calls you to step back, strip away the noise. Ask, why am I doing this? And when the answer feels honest, you align everything to it. Your time, your habits, your circle, your energy. This is the battlefield of identity, because passion without purpose is just emotion, and purpose without action is just philosophy. But when you lock all three together, you become dangerous. You wake up before the world because your work means something. You stay focused because your mission isn't about validation. You keep going even when the fire gets low because you've trained your life to move through storms, not beg for better weather. Don't confuse doing what you love with ease. Love requires sacrifice, purpose requires clarity, and action requires pain tolerance. But when you commit to all three, you rise. You become the kind of man success recognizes, not because you're chasing it, but because you're carrying something real inside you. So here's what you do. Reconnect with the thing that moves you, the craft, the cause, the skill that brings you alive. Don't wait for it to be perfect, just name it. Then ask, who needs this? How does this serve someone beyond me? That's your mission. Then ask, what does this require of me every day? That's your standard. You write it down. You live it. You repeat it until it becomes bone deep. Because in the end, the world doesn't need another man who's busy. It needs a man who's aligned. A man who knows what he loves, why he wakes up, and how to move like a warrior in his own arena. That kind of man doesn't just succeed, he becomes impossible to ignore. And success follows him like iron to a magnet. So stop asking what you want to achieve. Start asking who you're becoming and why it matters. Then live like your answer could change the world. Because if you do it right, it will. You've just walked through the philosophy, mindset, and discipline of becoming the kind of man success follows. Not a man who waits, not one who begs, but one who builds. From the inside out. You've seen how identity shapes destiny, how goals without clarity are empty, how resilience turns failure into fuel, how discipline outweighs motivation, and how applying what you learn carves you into a force the world can't ignore. You've seen why your circle must challenge you, why your mindset must evolve from scarcity to strength, and why your passion only has power when it's anchored in purpose and moved by action. Now, take these truths and do the only thing that matters. Live them, not just on inspired days, every day. Build your mental toughness like a craftsman sharpens his blade, slowly, deliberately, and with purpose. Practice daily discipline until it becomes instinct. Train your self-belief like a muscle. Refuse to wait for the right moment. Act with the mindset of a man who knows success is drawn to strength, clarity, and identity. This is how greatness begins, not with noise, but with quiet, consistent action. By showing up early, with doing what's hard, with thinking clearly, choosing wisely, and walking your path with calm intensity. You don't need to become someone else. You need to become more of who you were born to be, unshaken, focused, and driven by values that outlast trends. And as you do, you'll see that success isn't something you find. It's something you become worthy of. So start now. Take one idea from today and put it into practice. Make it a habit. Let that habit build momentum. And if this message spoke to you, share your story below. Let us know how you're becoming the man success respects, because your journey might just be the spark for someone else's.